Shen Qingyi never expected that one day she would wear a book and become the canon fodder female supporting character in a fairy tale novel, or the canon fodder that fell out shortly after being eliminated. Faced with the fate of canon fodder at the beginning, Shen Qingyi decided to stay away from the male and female leads, cultivate his own immortality, and walk his own path to becoming an immortal. It's just an ordinary matter as originally agreed, why did it crush all the way? Everyone was stunned and puzzled. Shen Qing smiled and said, did all the roads come out on his own? Keywords of the novel. No pop-ups after dressing up as a female character in the cultivation text canon fodder, complete collection download after dressing up as a female character in the cultivation text canon fodder. Latest chapters for reading after dressing up as a female character in the cultivation text canon fodder. Chapter 1. Wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Wedge. In my dream, I have walked through countless mountains and rivers, witnessed the prosperity of a prosperous era. After waking up from my dream, I held the Zhu Xing in my hand and clicked the stroke in my heart. Both Qingfeng and I have been passing by, half a foot without dust, laughing at the world. Shen Qingyi, a new book is coming, occupy a pit first. If you like it, please join the bookshelf as soon as possible. Seeking support, seeking collection, seeking tickets. I have finished the cultivation article, female supporting immortal cultivation. Everyone can go and take a look. Thank you to all the lovely readers who have chosen to read this book. May everyone find their favorite books as well. Shen Qingyi Communication Group. 849186146. Interested little cuties, welcome to join the group. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Identity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Identity. Shen Qing looked at the pear blossom petals that had fallen to the ground, and couldn't help but feel a bit dazed. She has been in this world for a few days now, but she still feels a bit unreal. Who would have thought that one day she would become a character in a novel? Or become a canon fodder supporting actress inside? Yes, Shen Qingyi dressed up as a canon fodder female supporting character in a novel she had read in her previous life. The immortal couple goes together. And through the fragments of the original owner's soul, I saw her brief life. Now we have returned to the time when the original owner was young. The book, Walking Together with Immortals, was a novel she had read before, mainly about the countless small worlds under the floating world, where various worlds practiced and worshipped martial arts. The female protagonist Fu Yuyao travels through the end times of the cultivation family, while the male protagonist Chu Jing is a genius disciple of the Great Master sect. The two of them fight monsters and upgrade along the way, and also have a romantic relationship. Finally, they become strong figures in the cultivation world, and everyone praises them. When I watched it at that time, I also thought it was quite good, especially when the male and female protagonists challenged each other step by step, killed all the people blocking the way, and slapped each other in the face. At that time, watching her was like boiling blood. But I never thought that one day, she would become an unknown canon fodder inside. Shen Qingyi is a person of Zedi sect who cannot even be considered a miscellaneous disciple. Being able to stay in Zedi sect is still due to the pitiful alms of an external disciple of the sect. However, for some members of Zedi sect, her existence is an insult and not a shame. There is no other reason. The Lin family is the largest family under the jurisdiction of Zedi sect. The two ancestors of the Lin family are both the top 3 Jindan ancestors in Zedi sect's current strength ranking. In this area of the northern regions, Zedi sect is a first-class sect, and almost no one dares to provoke them. The cultivators of other sects also need to give some face. And the Lin family is a presence within the Zedi sect that no one dares to provoke. All of this is the proud capital of the Lin family. However, this capital was broken by someone 6 years ago. A destitute and demonic nun kidnapped the most talented young master of the Lin family in a secret realm, and used the joyful magic technique to collect yang and replenish yin. This kind of thing is not uncommon in the cultivation world. At most, some people would sigh at the female demon's ability to cultivate, or feel regretful for the young master of the Lin family who was forced to break through Yuanyang before building a foundation. But no one expected that the secret realm would undergo a huge change midway. The secret realm has changed from half a year when it was originally opened to 2 years. Moreover, there is an ancient inheritance hall inside. Almost all cultivators who can enter the main hall and receive inheritance will be transported to a safe space to receive inheritance. And the duration of this inheritance can be long or short. The shortest day and the longest took almost 2 years. During this period, the body of the cultivator who receives the inheritance will fall into a deep sleep, and the formation in the main hall will provide a continuous stream of spiritual power and vitality to the cultivator who receives the inheritance to ensure their safety. And the female demon cultivator who recruited the young master of the Lin family is one of the cultivators who has been passed down. And she slept soundly in that space for over a year. And it was during that period that the female demon cultivator unexpectedly became pregnant and gave birth to the original Shen Qingyi. The female demon cultivator who only obtained inheritance and gave birth to offspring is very weak in body. For Shen Qingyi's accident, I originally wanted to strangle him from the beginning, but I was afraid that my body would be weak and I wouldn't be able to leave the secret realm. A flash of inspiration flashed through her mind, and she thought of the identity of the male cultivator she had chosen to fill. The weight of the young master of the Lin family is sufficient, and there are definitely many people in the secret realm of the Lin family. I didn't start by killing Shen Qingyi to take advantage of the female cultivator of the Lin family. With Shen Qingyi, we found the cultivator of the Lin family and wanted to exchange. After all, the Lin family is a prestigious and influential family in the impoverished northern region, and they also attach great importance to their bloodline. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Artillery Ash. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 4. Fangshi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Fangshi. After completely merging with this body and soul, the remaining consciousness of the original owner, even knowing about his own miserable life. That simple and ordinary little girl didn't have any hatred, only a hint of nostalgia for Feng Luo. The grass outside the window was rustling in the wind. Several sword lights flashed over the sky. Now happens to be the time for the sex big competition. The original Shen Qingyi was excited to go and watch after learning that Feng Luo would also participate in this competition after his training. But he bumped into the Lin family, was humiliated, and sadly ran back to his residence, crying and sleeping on the bed. According to the current storyline, the female protagonist is still in the backyard of a secular family, fighting against some wolves, jackals, tigers, and leopards. As the 3-year apprenticeship selection conference of Zaydi sect began, the female protagonist appeared in front of everyone with an astonishing posture and extraordinary talent. From now on, the female lead's cultivation mode will be activated. After coming here for a few days without returning to her original world, Shen Qing ignored all kinds of emotions and tried to adapt to her current identity as quickly as possible. Since she has arrived at this cultivation world and is now powerless to change, it's better to let nature take its course. Everyone has come, of course we need to go and take a look. Besides, the cultivation world is so big, and she follows her own path of cultivation. As long as she avoids the male and female leads, isn't there enough space for her to see? Shen Qingyi returned to the rudimentary thatched cottage. Now she is just a 9-year-old girl who has never learned magic, and she doesn't even know if this body has spiritual roots. If there were no spiritual roots, it would be difficult for her to cultivate immortality, travel the world of cultivation, and even get rid of the fate of cannon fodder. So the most important thing now is to test the spiritual root and know if this body has any cultivation talent. But within the Zaydi sect, the sect selection meeting of Zaydi sect is held every 3 years, and it was only held last year. If you want to enter the Zaydi sect again and become a true disciple, you will have to wait for another 2 years before it is possible. Moreover, in the cultivation world, once one has passed the age of 10 and has not yet tested their spiritual roots, they need to pay a lower-grade spiritual stone as the cost of testing their spiritual roots. Ordinary people still use silver, those with skills are spirit beads, and those with backgrounds in their homes also have spirit stones. But like the original body, if searched all over the body, there may not be 10 taels of silver. Moreover, most of the silver is distributed to all ordinary people in the jurisdiction of Zaidi sect at the annual recruitment conference. She doesn't have much silver. Moreover, it is an inferior spiritual stone. The original owner was miserable and sorrowful, but now she has inherited this legacy. The distant melodious bell still rings from time to time. Shen Qingyi is no longer interested in seeing that big comparison. He took out a few taels of silver from the room and walked along the winding path towards the nearest neighborhood to Zaidi sect. If you want to change, you have to find a way. Even though Zaidi sect may not be a beautiful place for the original Shen Qingyi, it has to be said that it is a good place for most people. Just a few neighborhoods under the jurisdiction of Zaidi zone have a good safety index. For a cultivator, the road to Fangshi only took half an hour for a short time, but for a mortal named Shen Qingyi, it was far away, taking her 2.5 hours. When he arrived at Fangshi, Shen Qing was gasping for breath from exhaustion. At the moment of entering the market, Shen Qing took a deep breath and finally arrived. There are many cultivators in the neighborhood, and apart from most merchants, the most numerous cultivators are probably disciples of Zaidi sect. Of course, there are also other cultivators, interspersed with many mortals. There are disciples of Zaidi sect's discipline hall in the local area, who manage the general rules. Excellent talisman. Excellent talisman. Only 3 inferior spirit stones. 3 inferior spirit stones. Q's bird feather. Good treasure for refining. Defense vests. Can withstand mid-cycle attacks during Qi training. The shouting around made Shen Qingyi momentarily dazed. The beautiful scenery within Zaidi sect, even as she lives on a barren mountain, can be glimpsed in the mist and clouds. This city, apart from some unique features of the cultivation world, is somewhat similar to the ancient town streets she has seen. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Academy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Academy. Shen Qingyi wants to see if there is any good way inside the neighborhood. Along the way, I found that the little silver money in her hand was really of no use. Strolling around, many merchants glanced at her as an ordinary little doll without any spiritual power and stopped looking. Shen Qingyi has not found any useful way. But she didn't give up either. Now, even the inner walls of Zaidi sect's miscellaneous peaks cannot be entered, let alone the outer and inner gates. Only that neighborhood can she go and take a look. So I wake up early every day and go for a walk in the neighborhood. The market was very large, and although she was tired from walking back and forth every time, Shen Qingyi did not stop. While seeking opportunities, Shen Qingyi also sees it as a form of physical exercise. A thin and small body, with a small waxy face, shuttling through the crowd. On the 9th day of Shen Qingyi's repeated efforts, she discovered an interesting and useful place. In the eastern part of Fangshi, there is a learning place similar to an academy, and she was initially attracted by the sound of reading inside. In today's world of cultivating immortals, there is a reverence for martial arts and a focus on cultivation. With the presence of jade slips and divine consciousness, there are few places to teach and read. And the academy located in the east has a dedicated teacher to give lectures. Shen Qingyi deliberately stayed around the academy for a long time, but he heard a lot of news about that academy. The academy is not big, and the sound she hears of reading is from the outskirts of the academy. Inside the academy, there is a place dedicated to teaching spells and practices, while outside, it is a place specifically designed for enlightening children to learn. The students recruited range from 3 to 5 years old. Her body has never been taught since childhood, and apart from not being able to speak much, she doesn't know how to read at all. Although she has memories from her past life, the writing in this world is different from the writing in her past life. She is now illiterate. Shen Qingyi believes that in order to better integrate into this world, recognizing characters is essential. Shen Qingyi hesitated for a long time, every day outside the outer wall of the academy, listening to the pleasant sound of reading inside, struggling to learn something. Perhaps even the heavens thought she was too pitiful, and finally, in the corner of a college wall, she discovered a place resembling a dog hole. Shen Qing looked at the dog hole and became silent. Without much hesitation, he pulled up his sleeves, lowered his body, and headed towards the dog hole. Through the narrow dog hole, the world in front of me suddenly becomes clear. The blurry sound of reading for a long time became clear. Shen Qingyi carefully climbed up from the ground and patted the dust off his clothes. Adjacent to a hidden corner, I secretly looked at a group of little radish heads learning not far away. An open house with about 30 little dolls inside. The teacher is an old man with gray hair. The book in the old man's hand covered half of his face, and his eyes were half closed, not paying too much attention to the children below. And most of the little children who are studying are also in a state of not being too distracted. In this world where martial arts and immortal cultivation are prevalent, they have been instilled with the knowledge of the strong since childhood. Only by cultivating immortality well can there be a way out in the future. These literate words are all to roughly understand a few words, so as not to encounter some ancient books and miss opportunities, as long as they can be used. If you take this as true, then you are a fool. Shen Qingyi hid in the corner and listened attentively. The old man always hung his head down, but there was a book boy serving on the side, helping to manage and often explaining a few things. At noon, the little children who had not yet cleared the valley left one after another and went to the cafeteria inside the academy to eat. Only the old man with half-drooping head remains. The book in the old man's hand has not been flipped through all morning. Shen Qingyi heard a faint gurgling sound coming from his stomach and couldn't help but touch it. Glancing at the deserted lobby, I thought for a while, I shouldn't be giving any more lectures. Quietly crawling out of the dog hole again. The hustle and bustle of the street caught Shen Qingyi's ear, and he took a deep breath. Following the memories of coming over in the morning, I found a small shop selling steamed buns. I asked the lady for 2 steamed buns. Picking up the hot buns, the aroma was strong, and the already hungry stomach seemed even more hungry. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Overnight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Overnight. Even for cultivators, the steamed buns in their hands are ordinary things that cannot enter their stomachs. Eating them will only increase impurities in their bodies. But for Shen Qingyi at this moment, it is a delicious existence. Eating hot buns all the way, when he returned to the outer wall of the academy, Shen Qing wiped his hands. Following the discovered dog hole, I crawled back in. Fortunately, this body is small and has little flesh. Return to the hidden corner where I stayed in the morning. The lecture hall has gradually brought back some people. After everyone arrived, the book boy started teaching again. Time flies, and the sky has become a bit dark. The day's teaching has finally come to an end. After the old man and the book boy left, Shen Qing returned to his senses in a secluded manner. Coming into a strange world, feeling helpless and helpless, she was fascinated by the urgency of learning knowledge. Looking into the sky at this moment, I realized that it was already getting late. Other children are usually picked up and dropped off by family members or live nearby. But if she returned from the alchemist to the outer peak area of Zadie Zong's miscellaneous work, it would take 2.5 hours. She must have not returned to the workers' peak yet, and the sky will be completely dark. On the way, there is also a small forest to pass by. Saying not to be afraid is false. This is not the civilized world she used to stay in, there are demons and monsters here. Even if this is under the jurisdiction of Zadie sect, no one can guarantee that this road will be absolutely safe. But this academy is not necessarily safe at night. Shen Qingyi carefully considered and felt that the academy was still safer than going back at night. Shen Qing found a leeward corner and curled himself up in a ball. Quietly wait for the arrival of dawn. Just one person's night seems a bit extra long. The quiet night is left with only the howling of the wind and the rustling of leaves. Shen Qing couldn't help but hold herself tighter. This is the first time Shen Qingyi has truly felt the authenticity of this world. Her past life seems to have become an irreversible past. Leaving school, leaving family, and entering a new world full of crises. Helpless and helpless, low and weak. She just wants to work hard to survive now. Cherish life, perhaps one day, you can return to that familiar place again. After tossing and turning, Shen Qingyi sleeps vaguely. The hazy halo of moonlight scattered on the earth. No one seems to have noticed the absence of one person in the thatched hut on the barren mountain of Zadisek's miscellaneous peak tonight. Dong dong. The melodious sound of the bell woke up Shen Qingyi, who was still asleep. Shen Qingyi frowned slightly and opened her eyes with some difficulty. The fog in the midsummer morning is very thick, with eyelashes covered in mist droplets, and the clothes on the body are also somewhat damp. She curled up all night, making her whole body a bit stiff. Someone has already arrived in the classroom. From afar, Shen Qingyi saw the teacher pick up the scroll from yesterday and sit on the podium with the old god present again. The bookboy waited on the side, waiting for the arrival of the students. Shen Qing glanced at the sky and crawled out trembling. On the street side, the shop that sold steamed buns yesterday has already set up its place. Or that old lady. "Auntie, 2 meat buns, please." Upon hearing a tender and slightly hoarse voice, the old lady lifted her head and was momentarily stunned when she saw Shen Qing. There are not many ordinary people in this alchemist, but those who come to her to buy steamed buns come and go, back and forth. Those who can be named are familiar, while those who cannot be named are mostly memorable. And this little doll, she also had a slight impression, was a little girl who came to her place yesterday to buy steamed buns. The sky was not yet bright, and the old lady couldn't help but look around and didn't see any relatives like this child. "I couldn't help feeling a bit regretful when I thought of something, but I didn't say anything more." "Take out 2 large buns from the steamer and hand them to Shen Qingyi." Shen Qingyi took the steamed bun, took out the silver money, and handed it to the lady. The lady looked at the silver coins on her thin and almost skinny little hands, rubbed her hand under the cloth, reached out, and took Shen Qingyi's silver coins. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Unmanned. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Unmanned. Shen Qing quickly finished eating the steamed buns and hurriedly ran back to the academy, then climbed in again from the dog hole. At the desk, the old man, who was half pulling his eyelids, couldn't help but open his eyes a little. The long white eyebrows trembled, and the withered hands finally moved. Wow! The sound of books being flipped over. The lobby has returned to quietness. Until the first student arrived. "Hello, sir." That little doll, symbolically bowed. The old man didn't make any movement, and the bookboy nodded. The little doll didn't care and returned to her own table. After the first student arrived, other students came one after another. Today's teaching is almost the same as yesterday's. Shen Qingyi still listened attentively. "I just took a note today that when the sun sets in the west, I'll tidy up and quietly crawl out of the dog hole." The old man beside the desk moved his hand slightly, and his eyes remained calm as he glanced at the place where Shen Qingyi had just been staying. Shen Qingyi once again bought 2 steamed buns from his aunt. This neighborhood is the cheapest and most satisfying place to shop at. Hurry back to the thatched cottage on the barren mountain of Zadisek's peak. After a simple wash, the sky had completely darkened, and Shen Qingyi lay down with his clothes on. The next day, before dawn, Shen Qingyi got up from the bed. "Take out the money for the meal again and hide it in your pocket." Shen Qing immediately left the door. At this moment, the sky is still a bit dark, and the surroundings are also very quiet. As we walked out of the Zadisek gate, the sky was already slightly bright. Shen Qing took a deep breath. Accelerate your pace and get used to seeing Shen Qingyi's aunt again. I gave Shen Qing a bag of 2 steamed buns, but today I also added a bag of soybean milk. Little girl, today I just have too much soybean milk to hold. I'll give you something to taste. Shen Qing hesitated for a moment. The lady smiled gently when she saw this. Don't worry, you don't need any silver for this. Feeling her kindness, Shen Qingyi takes soybean milk. Thank you, madam. No need to thank you. No need to thank you. After leaving the humble steamed bun shop, Shen Qingyi ate steamed buns and drank soybean milk. Warm in my heart, I took a sniff. She also wanted to exchange silver for aunt's soybean milk, but the silver on her was really very little. Being frugal is what makes her barely survive. This is not her original world, only by truly feeling it can she understand that without strength, coupled with her age and height, all of these make it difficult for her to move forward, so she must calm down and not aim too high. Auntie's kindness, this is the first warmth she receives when she comes to this other world. I couldn't help feeling good. Just when Shen Qingyi found the original location of the dog hole again, he couldn't help but feel a bit dumbfounded. The original dog hole has disappeared. Shen Qing looked around and searched around, but did not find the original dog hole. Returning to the original place, I touched the still damp wall and understood. The dog hole has been sealed by someone. Looking at the high courtyard wall, Shen Qingyi couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. When the sky was bright, the sound of children reading could be heard again inside. Shen Qingyi calmed down and sat down on the ground, returning to the initial state of learning. When the children were resting at noon, she went to buy steamed buns again. This kind of day has been repeated for almost half a month. Shen Qingyi's originally waxy yellow face is now not just waxy yellow, but after half a month of exposure to sunlight and rain, his thin and dark face is now dark and dark. My body bones have grown a bit taller, but I am even thinner than before. However, Shen Qingyi was happy because she had learned a lot. Although it's a guessing game with confusion. On this day, she went from the barren mountains of Zadi Zone to Fangshi again, but when she finished breakfast and arrived at the outer wall of the academy, she waited for a long time without hearing anything inside. Shen Qingyi couldn't help but have some doubts. She stood at the edge of the outer wall, waiting all the time. From morning to noon, from noon to evening, there was no movement inside the academy. As dusk approached, Shen Qingyi had to go home. After she walked away, a figure appeared where she had just stayed, silent for a long time before leaving. The next day, Shen Qingyi continued to wait on the exterior wall as usual, but today there was still no movement inside the academy. This will continue for 3 consecutive days. Shen Qingyi looked at the high courtyard wall with some confusion. I pursed my lips and waited in my original position. The scorching sun shines brightly, and there are only a few small trees around the courtyard wall, which cannot block any sunlight. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Children. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Children. There is nothing blocking the sun at a closer position. Shen Qingyi was waiting, and gradually his eyelids drooped. The early departure and late return during this period have made her body and bones a bit tired. As the sun sets in the west, warm sunlight falls on the huddled figure. Step on it. The faint footsteps startled Shen Qingyi, who was still asleep. Shen Qing suddenly opened his eyes and instinctively guarded his body. When I saw the pair of embroidered cloud-patterned boots in front of me, I couldn't help but look up. The person coming is facing against the light. Shen Qing recognized this person at a glance. The old gentleman in the academy. First. Give birth. If it's not particularly standard, make the old man frown slightly. He has been paying attention to this little doll for a long time. From the first day she arrived. Although his cultivation is not high, he also has the ability to perfect his qi cultivation. This little doll is hiding in that hidden corner, perhaps not easily detected by mortals, but he is a spiritual cultivator. He originally thought that the little doll had made a mistake and entered the academy, so he didn't plan on meddling. But this little doll stayed in the corner of the academy for an afternoon. Even the next morning, he saw her covered in dew. It is obvious that she stayed in the academy all night. And on that day, she still stayed in the academy. Through observation, he found that this little doll seemed to be stealing learning. What to learn? 1. He couldn't help but sneer. In today's world, who would learn these things? As expected, she left in the afternoon. So he had someone seal the dog hole. I just didn't expect that in the next half-month, this little doll not only didn't give up in frustration and anger because the dog hole disappeared instead, he stayed at the outer wall and continued to learn. Sunlight and rain under the natural weather in his spell, he was extremely embarrassed, but never gave up. Now I have been waiting outside for a few days in vain. She doesn't know, are these days on vacation for the college? Even if you don't know, wouldn't you ask others about it? How could he be so dull? Shen Qing felt a little nervous when he saw that he had not spoken for a long time. At the end of the month, the college is on vacation. The old man's words couldn't help but leave Shen Qing slightly stunned. Immediately, he reacted and quickly got up from the ground. Sir. On what day did you come to this academy? Shen Qing guessed that this old gentleman should have known about her eavesdropping at this academy every day. Sir. To be honest, I don't want to hear lies. Shen Qing looked up at the old man with sincerity. Sir, I want to. Read, I want to. Speak. I want to. Live. Go on. The stuttering words made the old man lift his eyes. Literacy. Speaking. What does this have to do with being alive? Learning these things can't keep you alive in this world. Shen Qing smiled. The sunset is slightly warm, but in this cannibalistic world, it illuminates the little girl's smiling face at this moment. I will. Will it be possible? The old man brushed his sleeves. Turn around. The academy is not open to anyone, let alone a place for free teaching. If you want to enter through that dog hole again, I advise you not to think about it. However, I happen to be short of a young boy to sweep. Shen Qing suddenly looked up, his eyes shining brightly. The old man no longer stayed and lifted his foot to leave. Shen Qing quickly followed up. The old man stopped again. It's already late today. Starting from tomorrow, you can come back. Aha. Thank you, sir. The old man stopped talking and left, his figure disappearing under the sunset. Shen Qing was happy all the way, but when he returned to the barren mountain of Zaydi sect, he still felt a bit dazed. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Male supporting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Male supporting. The sky was completely dark, but there seemed to be a glimmer of light, getting brighter and brighter. Shen Qing smiled, but when she saw the person standing outside her thatched cottage, a smile couldn't help but ripple down her face. Upon hearing the sound of movement, Feng Luo still did not turn back. Shen Qingyi stood from a distance. The young man was dressed in an outer disciple's robe, with flying ink hair and a straight posture. There was no movement for a long time, and it was only after the wind fell that I turned my head. It has to be said that the face of Feng Luo is worthy of being the male supporting character of the original book. Clear and handsome appearance, sword eyebrows and starry eyes, warm and smooth like jade. Although the young man at this moment has not yet shed his youthful energy, it is not difficult to see the extraordinary future. This is one of the male supporting characters in the original book, Feng Luo. A person who appears as gentle as jade on the outside but is stubborn inside. Feng Luo's qualifications are not good, he can only be said to be average, but he works very hard. Heaven rewards diligence, and his efforts have also been rewarded with good luck. With the qualifications of the 3 spirit roots, step by step, I eventually became the senior brother of the Zaidi sect generation. His only regret in this life is probably not being able to hold the beauty back in the end. Finally, as he watched his beloved woman and the male lead fly together, he could only silently guard on the side. It can be said that most of the male supporting characters in this book are like this. Although the original body had obsession with him, now it is Shen Qingyi. She is Shen Qingyi, she will continue to work hard to survive. Live a good Shen Qingyi. Feng Luo saw Shen Qing not speaking for a long time and reached out his hand. Spread out your hands, in the palm of your hand, lay a cloth bag quietly. Here are some silver coins, you can take them. Shen Qingyi took a step back. The motion of the wind falling froze. He has been competing in the sect competition these days and has not seen this little girl for a long time. When I first saw her, I only felt a hint of pity before reaching out to help. Later on, the little girl kept clinging to him, and every time she returned from her training, she would stand far outside the mountain gate, watching him. Timid, with sparkling eyes, yet afraid to approach. After the big competition, he remembered that he had not seen her for a long time. Before the big comparison, she stuttered and said she would go see him. He didn't see her, but he was not surprised because he knew that she couldn't even enter the outer gate, not even the outskirts of the miscellaneous worker peak. At this moment, I see again that little girl who seemed to have grown a lot, but she has become even thinner and even darker. He couldn't help but think of her rudimentary living environment. If he gives her something else or gives her too much, she may not be able to keep it, so she can only give some ordinary silver that is of little use to the disciples of the sect. However, this time the little girl seems a bit different. Shen Qingyi did not feel any malice from Feng Luo's body. Now she can enter the academy and in the future, she can slowly support herself. Life will get better and better. Raise your eyes and gaze at the indifferent gaze of Feng Luo. I have silver money, so there's no need to. Yours, thank you. Upon hearing Shen Qingyi's words, Feng Luo was slightly surprised. This little girl said such a long sentence for the first time. However, since she didn't take it, he wouldn't say much and put away the small cloth bag. Turn around and leave. Shen Qing looked at the figure of Feng Luo leaving and sighed lightly. The original owner did not hate him, only a hint of obsession. This is what she is willing to see. After all, judging from the original book, this male supporting character did not disappoint the original female lead either. And the original owner was also unfamiliar with her so-called family. She is a stranger from a different world and has no special feelings towards those people. Since they treat her as a stranger, she naturally does the same. She just wants to walk her own path. Without looking further, Shen Qingyi returned to the wooden house. I have to wake up early tomorrow and go to the academy. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. New Year's Eve. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 10. New Year's Eve. Early in the morning, Shen Qingyi packed everything up and rushed to the academy. When Shen Qing arrived, the gate of the academy had not yet been opened. Shen Qingyi stood beside the high gate of the academy. At the moment when the sun rises to the east, a ray of sunlight passes through all things and shines on the plaque above the entrance of the academy. The 4 characters, Qingji Academy, shine brightly under the sunrise. Shen Qingyi's eyes gradually brightened as well. This is her first step in this world. Step by step. The book boy looked at the person standing at the entrance of the academy with some confusion. Sir, I remember there was never such a child in the academy before. Is it difficult to be a person from the inner courtyard? But aren't the martial artists from the inner courtyard entering through the east gate? The old man looked at the little child under the high wall and flicked the robe off his body. There hasn't been anything in the past, it has been there since today. The book boy seemed to understand and followed behind the old man. Upon hearing footsteps, Shen Qing looked up. Since you're here, let's go in. Shen Qing quickly followed the old man. From today on, you will be my little boy for cleaning. Can you call me Qi Lao? The hygiene in the academy needs to be cleaned twice a day. If there is any other work to do, I will also let you know. Do you know? Shen Qing quickly nodded. Seeing her like this, the old man lowered his eyes slightly. He didn't know why he took this little girl. Even though she has no cultivation and no spiritual fluctuations on her body, she doesn't look like a person with a background when looking at her appearance and clothes. Is it pitiful? But there are many pitiful cultivators and mortals in the cultivation world, and there are also many who are even more miserable than her. Qi Lao hooked his lips. Da Di was one of the few things he saw from her. Shen Qing stayed behind the old man, listening to the sound of reading in the academy, feeling peaceful in his heart. I will also help the book boy tidy up some things. The book boy's name is Zhao Ji, and he is the only book boy of Qi Lao. He usually helps to teach these children and some personal affairs. Zhao Ji guessed that Shen Qingyi's situation should not be very good, and he would also take care of her on weekdays. Shen Qingyi cherished this hard-earned opportunity and, while helping, also learned knowledge. It has to be said that being a scout behind Qi Lao is much more useful and faster than hiding in a corner or outside the wall to eavesdrop on learning. Days quietly pass by in peace and fulfillment. In the blink of an eye, it was from the scorching summer to the cold winter and 12th month. In the northern region, there are still many ordinary people and small towns. Due to the connection between the two sides and some secular customs, many cultivators also follow along. Therefore, during the Chinese New Year, they will still prepare for the holiday. The academy also takes a break during the Chinese New Year. Qi Lao had descendants in the secular world and left the academy at the end of the year. Zhao Ji's family members are monks, but there are also ordinary people at home who will go home for the Chinese New Year. Shen Qing stood in the corridor of the academy, his hands clasped together, exhaled and rubbed vigorously. The goose feathers outside the nut drifted heavily in snow, and the world seemed to be shrouded in a white veil. Zhao Ji packed his things and looked at Shen Qingyi standing by the corridor. He couldn't help but step forward and speak. Shen Qingyi, do you want to go home for the Chinese New Year? Shen Qing turned around. Don't reply. Her home is not here. Zhao Ji scratched his head and didn't ask anything. He took out a token from his pocket and handed it to Shen Qingyi. Brother Zhao. The package in this brocade bag is the entry and exit token for the outer courtyard of the academy. The master handed it to me before leaving, saying that if you don't go home during the Chinese New Year, I will give it to you. The brocade bag lay in Zhao Ji's palm, shining brightly. Here, sir. Sir also said that if you stay in the academy, the hygiene in the academy must not be neglected. If you see any dissatisfaction when he comes back, you will be punished. Zhao Ji felt a bit embarrassed. He felt that the little girl in front of him was already pitiful enough. He had seen her for so long and had not heard her mention her relatives, afraid that the situation was not very good. And the 9-year-old doll, due to malnutrition, looks like a 5 or 6-year-old doll. Staying alone in a cold academy, having to clean on New Year's Eve. Seeing Zhao Ji's thoughts, Shen Qing smiled. Take the brocade bag from his hand. Brother Zhao, thank you. Thank you, sir. Ha ha ha. You're welcome. Zhao Ji turned around and ran out, still waving his hand to Shen Qing. Shen Qingyi is waiting for me at the academy. After Chinese New Year, Brother Zhao will come back. I will bring you the osmanthus cake made by my mother then. End of this chapter.